Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jill Nagy-Reynolds, and I'm with the SBA Columbus District Office. And hopefully you are joining us today because you are going to participate in the Ohio Business Matchmaker on May 3rd and 4th, actually less than a month away. So this is a webinar training in preparation for the Ohio Business Matchmaker. We will officially get started. All right, it's 1:03. I'll go ahead and get us started. As I mentioned before, I'm Jill Nagy-Reynolds from the SBA Columbus District Office. And the training this afternoon is about the SBA Mentor Protégé Program. And this training is unique in that there's two parts to it. It will be recorded. In fact, it's recording now. The first part of the training is actually from 1 to 2. Well, we will learn more about the SBA Mentor Protégé Program, eligibility requirements, considerations for success, and so forth. And then from 2 to 3:30, we will have a panel discussion, which will be led by my colleague, Shonda Harris, also from the SBA Columbus District Office. We will hear from successful mentors and their proteges. So kind of a boots on the ground, business to business type of panel discussion. So we're very excited about that. Joining us today to discuss the Mentor Protégé Program is K.A. Perkins. She is the Deputy Director of the SBA Mentor Protégé Program. We're very pleased to have her. Before she starts her presentation, however, we will hear from Joey Scott, the Apex Accelerator Program Manager for the state of Ohio. But before I turn it over to him, please note that if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And I will monitor the chat and will ask KA at the appropriate time. So please rest assured we will do our best to get to your question. I will just find a good time to ask them. So Joey, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jill. As you heard this morning, I am Joey Scott. I am the statewide director for our Apex Accelerator program here in Ohio. And as Jill mentioned, you may know us more familiarly by our former name, the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or PTACs. So we had a change in leadership at the highest level within the Department of Defense, and with that comes a new name. But most importantly, the same mission, and that mission is to help businesses like yourself with all things government contracting. So I like to tell people we are your ally in government contracting from cradle to grave. Our services span the entire process from helping you get started with registering in SAM or any other registrations, helping you look at and apply for business certifications, to more advanced things such as, not only finding contract opportunities, but reviewing your proposals to make sure they are as competitive as they can be. And then on the post-award side of things, once you've won contracts, helping you with understanding those contract clauses, even more advanced things such as cybersecurity or foreign ownership, control, and influence. So very wide breadth of services here. But you're not here to hear about me. So you are here to hear about the Mentor Protégé program, and we got some great speakers here with K.A. Perkins and the panel that will follow. So with that, Jill, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Joey. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Deputy Director for the SBA Mentor Protégé Program, K.A. Perkins. K.A., I will turn it over to you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, again. And thank you, Jill, for inviting me to this event. This is my first time attending, but I mean, there's definitely a lot of knowledge on this call. So you guys who are participating are very fortunate to have your district office so involved in your success. And so hopefully I'll add to that in the next 45 minutes. I will try to not talk over 45 minutes. But with a microphone, I am a bit of a talker. So I want to give you guys a chance to ask all the questions you've been meaning to ask, from the most rudimentary of questions to the most technical in nature. So hopefully by the time I finish this, you guys will be able to have at least a basic knowledge and breadth of how MPAs work and how joint ventures work, and so forth. And so with that, I like to get started. So as I often say at the very beginning, just to warn people, I'm a former teacher, so I like to teach. And so I like to include quiz questions because this is how we learn. You don't want death by PowerPoint. You want to have some type of conversation that's engaging, something that makes sense, and something that takes you from point A to point B, right? So we've got a question here, and it looks like people are still trickling in. We've got a good turnout, I think 28 participants. So feel free to add your answers to the chat. I'm going to be looking, I really want to see what you guys know, how much you know, and that kind of keeps me on track. So I'll read the question out, I'll read the answers, and I'll give you just a moment to answer the question before I answer it. So question 1, which means there's more than one question, by the way. So you have Protégé Small Biz, is it 8A, Hub Zone, and WOSB. WOSB is Women-Owned Small Business. Small Biz forms an MPA relationship with its mentor, Big Biz. And then later, the two of them form a joint venture. So the question is, which certifications does a joint venture possess? So we have 4 answers. A is 8A, B is Hub Zone, C is WOSB, Women-Owned Small Business participant, or is it D, all of the above? So while you're kind of figuring out what the answer is, I'm going to read it one more time for the cheap seats in the back. Protégé Small Biz is 8A, Hub Zone, and WOSB. Small Biz forms an MPA relationship with mentor Big Biz and later a joint venture. Which certifications does the joint venture possess? So I see that Brandon is not shy, Brian is not shy, Tiara not shy either. So you guys are just too smart for my blood. So yes, the answer is D. Okay. And so
Hey, KA, we can't see your presentation. I don't know if you're not sharing yet.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's reshare it. Maybe there's an issue there. Okay.
Okay, yep.
Okay, awesome,
Yep.
awesome. I gotta have you guys able to see it. All right. So I always like to start with this slide because this is the whole reason why SBA's Mentor Protégé Program even exists. Okay, so first I want to give you kind of an overview, and I'll go through the different types of assistance real quick. So notice that I'm saying MPA and not JV. I haven't gotten to the JV part yet. So the difference is the MPA is the agreement, is the business development piece of your relationship with the other business. I'm going to talk to all of you as if you're all protégés. That might not be the case. But since we tend to focus on the success of small business at the U.S. Small Business Administration, I'm going to act accordingly. So there's 6 different types of business assistance. There's management and technical assistance. There's financial assistance, contracting assistance, international trade education, business development assistance, and administrative. Probably the one that I see the least, in case you're wondering, is international trade. A lot of the contracts, of course, are going to take place within, the United States or, one of its territories, maybe not so much on foreign soil, even though those contracts actually exist. So you have management and technical assistance, which, is pretty much just like it sounds. This could be anything from actual management of the company to, the technical type of assistance that a small business would need. And there's overlap between these two, right? So you see contracting assistance on the screen. Of course, the most common form of that is going to be joint ventures, but we'll get into that on the next slide. You also have financial assistance, and the breadth of this could be as wide as you would like it to be. It could be if you're in construction or a similar type of business, it could be for, bid bonds, for example, or, you need cash flow. And so maybe the mentor wants to give you a loan in exchange for some type of equity in your business. Business development assistance could be all of the stuff that I just mentioned, or it could be something that is very specific. One example that I like to give is QuickBooks. It's, basically the protege saying, hey, I have some type of deficiency here, and this mentor is going to assist. So maybe it's accounting assistance that's needed, and the mentor is going to come in and actually help with that. And then administrative assistance, maybe just kind of like the grassroots type of assistance, maybe administrative help, just kind of whatever it looks like. What we don't do, in case you've looked at or researched other federal mentor protege programs, we don't really get into the nuts and bolts. I'll say this, I've done presentations with DOD's Mentor Protege Program a few times. I attended their DOD conference. And if you're comparing the two, there's a lot of differences. But one thing that I'll say is DOD is kind of like the US savings bond version of NPAs. I mean, they check for everything. They make sure that the mentor is giving what they consider to be enough assistance. There is no joint venturing of sorts really, but there is a paying it forward when it comes to all the different types of assistance that a mentor can give. So they're very different in that respect. Whereas SBA is more of a high risk, high reward type of program. So we give you loose parameters, but we really do allow the mentor and protege to have some meaningful discussions to figure out what this agreement means for them and how the mentor can best assist the protege in reaching the protege's goals. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. Okay, so this is one of my favorite slides because this gives a visual as to what the different terms of art are and how it applies to you as a small business. So at the bottom, you have business development. That was what I just showed you. Those are the different types of assistance with the MPA. It's the QuickBooks of it all. So there's deficiencies that I have as a small business, and I found this mentor to come and help me with business development, to help get my business, my company from point A to point B. You have subcontracting, which is exactly the way it sounds. This is a prime sub relationship, whatever that looks like, whether it's the protege acting as the prime, which happens from time to time, but usually it's kind of the other way around, where the mentor, the more experienced firm, the one that most likely has those also important relationships with federal agencies. It's the mentor that's usually the prime, and then the protege subcontracts. But like I said, it could be the other way around too. And then there's joint ventures. A lot of you are asking questions, I'm sure, of your BOSs and your district office staff about joint ventures and what are the parameters. And I know I'm going to get a performance of work related question today. Why not? And how do you divvy that up? What does that look like? Is there a limit as to how much money I can get? How much work do I need to perform? Blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of information. And it can be confusing at times. So that is what we're here for. So the reason I like to show this slide, drum roll please, is because technically you don't need SBA's Mentor Protege Program to do anything that's on this slide. And for those of you who were taking notes or looking at your phone, I'll repeat it again. You do not need the Mentor Protege Program for this slide. You can learn QuickBooks on your own. You can do that offline. You can figure out how to write federal proposals offline with your mentor. You don't need us for that. In fact, you just heard Joey, and Joey will help you put your proposal together. You don't need us for that. You don't need us for a prime sub relationship. You guys can go at that on your own and form that contract between the prime and perhaps a first tier subcontractor. You don't need us for that. And you don't need us for joint ventures as long as the two partners or more are individually and collectively small. So I always like to give the NACE code of 236220, which is general construction. Many moons ago when I was in contracting, those are the types of procurements I did, construction and AE and the like. So construction has, as far as I know, has always had a very high dollar value. It's still 36.5 million. Well, if I'm a protege and, I made, I don't know, 1.2 million last year, over the 5-year aggregate. Let me get it right. I've got Roman Ivy talking about size, so let me get that whole thing right. And then let's say my mentor is Jill, and Jill is much bigger and more experienced than I am, and her average or her 5-year aggregate is 20 million. Well, individually and collectively, we're still small. So technically, you do not need the Mentor Protégé Program for any of these things. So I'm sure you're like, pray tell, why does your program exist and why do I need it? Well, the reason it exists is because it creates a formal arrangement between a small and big business. That's one kind of a generic point to be made. But also there is an affiliation waiver that's created between a small and an other than small business, i.e. a large business. Whereas the two of you who may have, a $40 million 5-year average versus that 1 or 2 million average, you guys can still joint venture together and not be found to be affiliated. And affiliation, by the way, because I'm sure someone will probably ask, before I even get to this point, affiliation basically is just a matter of control. It's the sharing of personnel and resources, perhaps familial control. Are the protege and the mentor brother and sister, husband and wife? Did one important figure, if you will, it states it differently in 13 CFR, but is there an officer who worked for the mentor who now works for the protege? It's that co-mingling of things that may create a issue of control where things aren't exactly kosher. So
we have a question that's a really good question, KA. Is the Mentor Protege Program only for 8A groups? Or does a newer small business of 5 employees have the ability to participate?
Sure. It's not just for 8A. And so for those of you who know of the Mentor Protege Program from way back when, it was something that was specific to 8As. In 2016, that changed. And so how did that change? Well, my office was stood up. And at the time, it was called the All Small Mentor Protege Program. Doesn't roll off the tongue, but that's what it was called. So as of November of 2020, those two programs were consolidated into a single program, which is now called the SBA Mentor Protege Program. Why? Because they were the same program. They pretty much had 2 different places within the regs, but they were almost identical in what the regs said and the actual benefits that were to be gained. Okay, so no, you do not have to be 8A. In 2016, that changed. And in 2020, it changed again so that there is a single program that administers that. So Lee, you are so welcome. And so why do I have this slide up? So this is essentially the reason why my office exists. It exists so that that small business can, through some type of formal arrangement, build the capacity to eventually bid independently, okay? Okay, so I can't talk about my office with bragging on it a little bit. And I think this number has likely increased. But I would say as of this point, we've probably reviewed well over 2,500 applications. You're like, yeah, so what? Okay, so let me bring that into context. We had two conferences 2 weeks ago, and one was DOD's Mentor Protégé Conference. The other one was SBA's Mentor Protégé Conference. One was in Orlando, the other one was in Crystal City. I mention this because this is where you would have had a chance to actually see some of the different offices that manage their own mentor protege programs and see how they're similar and how they're different. So here's the difference. You have NASA, and they have their own program. I think they've got 8. They've got 8 agreements. This is the number that we've reviewed. The number we currently have is just under 1,600. So that kind of lets you know that SBA is not only the generalist program, but the predominant program by which firms, come together, forge those relationships and agreements, and if they so choose, create joint ventures based on that. Okay. So one thing I like to say about this slide is you see that really big number, and can I just tell you, there's 2 people doing applications, 2, not 20, not 200. 2 people who do applications. So I call my team, so aptly named, Tiny But Mighty. I have a total of 4 people. 2 do applications and 2 do annual evaluations, or if you're using 8A language, let's just call it continuing eligibility. Okay. So other federal programs, you were wondering what they were and what is KA talking about. So we're the predominant program at SBA, but there are other programs. There's DOD, NASA, Homeland Security, FAA, DOT, and Department of Energy. And they all have their respective programs. And in case
KA, I just want to just clarify, if it's a DOD mentor protege, it's only for like DOD contracts. So
yeah,
is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm about to break that down.
All right.
So you can go after whatever with a JV that is attached to an SBA mentor protege agreement. The other 6 programs are very program and mission specific. NASA cares about NASA. Department of Energy cares about Department of Energy, so forth and so on. And so they are going to be specific to those agencies. And even their rules are quite different. For example, I believe the Department of Energy requires that you actually have a DOE contract as a mentor. A lot of the other programs focus heavily on the mentor. We focus heavily on the small business. The thing that stands out to most of you who might have done your research on this is that DOD has a cost reimbursement component for the mentor. So, they are basically, I don't want to say it that way, but in a sense, paying the mentor, if you will, to participate in the program and to help a small business gain capacity. Okay, so another question that's popped up is there a limit to the number of, in the actual acronym, that the alphabet soup here is MPAs that you can be a part of? Absolutely. So the limit, and this will be on some of the slides as well, the limit is that the protege may have 2 lifetime MPAs. 2 lifetime MPAs. In a lifetime, 2 ever. That's the reason I was getting to that in future slides. That way you can kind of tie everything together. That's the reason why I say there's all this stuff that you can do outside of SBA's Mentor Protege Program. But when you do this, when you join our program, make it matter, make it count. Like, don't waste it because you see that this is kind of like the new flavor of the month. I'm sure for those of you who are so interested in the federal marketplace, or else you wouldn't be on this call, for so many of you, everyone and their dog has a joint venture. There are more joint ventures now than I think probably ever. It doesn't mean that's for you. It doesn't mean that, that a subcontracting, relationship isn't for you. You kind of have to figure out what's right for you so you can move forward accordingly. Okay, so our mentor protege program. So remember I said we consolidated back in, I think I have one more. Yeah, we consolidated back in November of 2020. And so there are some changes that happened. And so every time, let me just tell you this again, I like to tell you that I like to teach. So first of all, if you ever want to know like when rule changes are happening, it's on the Federal Register's website. So you can just Google it and sign up for alerts. And whenever something with your keywords comes up, you'll know that there is a change that's relevant to something you care about that's actually coming down the pipeline. So I'll say that first off. Also, when SBA puts out rule changes, I like to tell people that sometimes it's new stuff and then sometimes it's a clarification of stuff we've already said. So some of what you see on the screen here is both. Some new, some is just a clarification of some of the stuff that we've said before. So a difference would be this. Mentors cannot submit competing offers. I'm going to explain what that means in a second. We've always said that. That's not new. This is just us once again putting our foot down like, hey, we've gotten this feedback from contracting officers and from our agency partners. We've heard this, we've looked into individual cases as needed, just so that the world knows this is not something we support. So what does that look like? What does competition look like? So a mentor may have up to 3 concurrent relationships at any time. There's no lifetime limit. There's a limit to the number of concurrent relationships. And so let's say there's a huge GWAC coming out. I'm sure there's someone on this call who's interested in the one the VA has that's closing on April 24th. That's for $60 billion. I know someone's interested in that. I'm interested in it, but I can't participate. Just kidding. So let's say that a mentor has 2 proteges and they want to submit 2 respective proposals for that requirement. Okay, so what does that look like when it's okay? What does that look like when it's not okay? Now, to my knowledge, this requirement with the VA does not have swim lanes. So I don't think it does. I need to look into that more, but I'm not sure that it does. So let's say one of those proteges was HubZone and the other one was 8A, and there's 2 different pools, if you will, for both of those. And so they're going to submit one for 8A and one for HubZone. That's okay. If there were no swim lanes or pool, I call them swim lanes, some people call them pools, whatever. It's, within context, yeah, I think you get what I'm saying. So if there were no swim lanes and you're just competing with 2 proposals as a mentor from 2 proteges, that is not something that is acceptable, that we support, or that is in the spirit of our program. It costs a lot of money to put in on a requirement, to put that proposal together, to hire the people, to do the research, to compile the information, to read it, to follow the instructions that are on there. That is a lot of work, man hours, and manpower. And so for a mentor to submit multiple proposals with joint venture A and joint venture B is unacceptable. So that's the difference. If there's different swim lanes, it's okay. If there's not different swim lanes and it's just, a single award or a multiple award that is just, let's just say, all small business or whatever it is, then no, that's not acceptable. You're basically, you're going window shopping at the expense of at least one of your firms. That's not cool. So that is something that we've always said. Something that's new, it's not new now, but it was new as of 2020, is that facility security clearances are not required specifically for a joint venture when the partners of that joint venture actually have their own security clearances. So remember I talked about the 6 little bubbles, right? The different types of business assistance. Well, one type of business assistance that a protege may need is actually finding a mentor who's going to assist with the security clearance feature, whatever that looks like. Maybe they aren't paying for their personnel to get clearances, that's up to the partnership, but perhaps it's, based on our companies and our roles and who's employed under, each company, then if we partner together, we have the clearances that are necessary to compete on XYZ requirement. So DOD and some other agencies still take issue with this and say, well, no, like the entity itself actually needs to have a facility security clearance. And that is not SBA's take on that. We have now said this going on 3 years. And so we stand behind it. Okay, so that's something that is actually new as of 2020. Other tools, I'll try to get through these slides pretty quickly. Other tools are annulments. It's exactly what it sounds like. These MPA and MPA-JBs, they're marriages of sorts. And sometimes, you make a bad decision, and within the first 18 months, if you want out of that decision, then we, under most circumstances, allow it. And that's that. And the difference is that it doesn't count. Remember, a protege may have 2 lifetime MPAs. So if you mess up, you get into a bad relationship and you're within your 18 months, you can do an annulment. Well, you cannot.
KA, there was a question about how many MPAs a mentor can have.
Okay, so again,
well,
the number of MPAs a mentor may have is up to 3 concurrent MPAs at any one time. There is no lifetime limit. There's a bullet that you're probably looking at where you're like, well, what's that last bullet about Puerto Rico? And actually that's changed within the last year. So basically all, like Puerto Rico and all of the US's territories, you may have up to 5 proteges if they are in those US territories. So it was in 2020, Puerto Rico, and then it expanded about a year ago. Okay, and then on the left-hand side, the bottom bullet point, let me say a few words about this one. So this is a bar that's set. It is not something we review. So that bullet point that you're seeing where it says no more than 40% equity from a mentor. So if, let's say as a protege, you're thinking, okay, I need cash flow or I need a loan, and the mentor says, sure, I can do that. But, we're always looking out for the protege. And so we're, concerned about the level of commingling, or as we call it, affiliation between those 2 firms. And so what we've always said is that we will, generally speaking, not conclude that there's a finding of affiliation up to 40%. Anything more than that, there could be a finding of affiliation. So you want to stay within that 40%. This is not an agreement that we're going to look at, nor is this an agreement that expires when your MPA expires. That used to be a question I would get a lot. Like, oh, okay, so this is part of the Mentor Protégé Program, so that, now that we've done a voluntary termination, that agreement's done. No, that agreement was between the 2 of you, and it's done per the terms of the contract that both of you signed. Okay, trying to see if there are any more questions before I moved on. I'm gonna pick up the pace a little bit because I think I'm right at about 15 minutes before allowing for questions. So there used to be a 3 and 2 rule, and the 3 and 2 rule, many of you are probably familiar with it. It means if you decide to form that MPA, that JV, go after requirements, that you could earn no more than 3 contracts within a 2-year period. So a lot of people ask why this is. MPAs and joint ventures, by their very nature, are temporary entities. Temporary arrangements, temporary entities to create a handicap, if you will, to use sports language, to create basically a handicap to give that small business a leg up, therefore giving them capacity to bid independently, just like that slide said. So SBA took it upon itself to actually qualify and quantify what that actually meant rather. The issue with that is it became a little laborious for district offices and for SBA personnel to really determine. If you throw 5 spitballs at the wall and the government takes forever to figure out which spitballs are going to award to, this could get kind of convoluted. So then we got to go back and figure out, well, when did you send that one? Well, when was that awarded? That's when the clock starts. And then when did all the subsequent ones happen? And can we cut any of them off? Or are we just going to accept all of them? It's tedious is what I'm saying. And so now we no longer have that. It is what I refer to as an unlimited into rule. The 2 years is still there. It's the 3 that's been lifted. So now if you earn 16 contracts, as long as you can perform the work, then we're good with that. Okay. And by the way, I'm sure a number of you know this, as of 2016, SBA does not review or approve joint ventures aside from 8A sole source. Another tool, by the way, that happened in 2020 is that proteges may substitute one mentor for another if the mentor is not working out, but it is not as easy as it sounds. So a lot of times people think that this bottom bullet is automatic. It's not. Okay, so eligibility, you're a small business, you're interested. What does this mean? You got to be for-profit. You got to be small. With the U.S. Small Business Administration, you're saying you're a small business protege, you got to be small. There can not be a finding of affiliation between you and the mentor that you've chosen. We do not do matchmaking. You choose your own mentor. And again, you only have 2 bites at that apple. And so one way that you might be found to be affiliated is if you have a relationship prior to coming into our program and you've already worked out a loan between the 2 of you where they have, let's say 50% equity in your business. That could be a problem with regard to eligibility. Okay. And you may have no more than 3 proteges at any one time if you are a mentor. So some of these are kind of repetitive, but those are some of the numbers that, you kind of just need to remember as a small business or other than small business. I'll answer this question real quick before quickly going into the application process. So other than the financial benefit, what's the benefit? I'm so glad you asked this question, Lee. You are so on it. So let me talk about this for a little bit because I need you small businesses to realize that you have something to offer. This is when relationships go really badly. I've had phone calls from small businesses where they say something like, I'm just really trying to get all this together for the mentor. They make $3 billion last quarter. I'm just trying to do all this stuff. And I can't believe that they chose me and I blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's great. But the reason why they chose you is because they now become a new entrant into a market that they were previously ineligible for. Whether it's just small business set-asides or 8A, HubZone, WOSB, SDVOSB, whatever that looks like, you are helping them open the door. So realize that you have something to offer as a business. And let me give another plug. Sometimes the Boeings of the world are not the best companies to team with. You guys are probably so far apart in revenue and experience that there's going to be a little bit of a disconnect there, most likely. And while it is not my job to tell you which direction to go in, that's a business decision that you make. Some of the most successful relationships I've seen have been from graduated firms, like firms that have graduated from the 8A program, or ones that have their WOSB certification and they've grown within that certification, or whatever it is. But it's not always the Boeings and the Lockheeds of the world. Just keep that in mind. So you have something to offer, Lee. Remember that. Okay. So application process. So I'm going to bring this up real quick. You find your mentor, make sure both of you are registered in SAM, apply through Certify. We now have a Certify system, by the way. Super excited about that. It took a year to build. But for any of you who are already in the program, it was tedious getting approved and even more tedious staying in the program. And so The team and I, for an entire year, had weekly meetings, built out a system in Certify, and most of what we do now is in Certify. I just thought I would give a not so shameless plug, and shout out to my team for that. But just about everything now you can do in Certify, and then you set it and forget it for 105 days, which may seem egregious, complicated. I told you my team is mighty, but it's also tiny. So 15 days is to basically determine, did you submit everything that you were supposed to submit? I'm going to share with you, but I'm really not going to admit to it, even though I know this is being recorded, that right now the average is 3 days. I have an awesome screener. She screens very quickly. Also, 90 days is given to the analyst for actual processing. Remember, we look at 300-400, or we approve 300 to 400 cases every year. That's a lot to go through, and there's quite a bit that we do. The average is well below 90 right now. I looked this morning, it's at 40. I'm not going to admit to that though, in case it increases, but I'm just telling you, it's 90. So, and also it really depends on you and the mentor being responsive, you and the mentor submitting everything that you need to submit, and oh yeah, you and the mentor being responsive. So if my office sends you an RFI, and this is going to happen within the certified system, not outside of it like it used to, then we actually need you to respond and resolve that issue within 5 days, or else we have no choice but to close it. And once it's closed, it does not magically reopen. You just reapply. Okay. So maintaining eligibility. So you get in, how do you stay in? So you submit your annual reports that used to be done in SurveyMonkey. Now it's done in Certify, thankfully. And so we want to know how it's going. We want you to talk about those material and developmental benefits that you are hopefully gaining. And if you aren't, we want to hear about that too. That way we can either mediate if you want us to, or we can terminate the agreement if it's not a benefit. So we do reserve the right to actually do that. Also, if you have a joint venture, you are required to submit to the contracting officer and to SBA annual and project end reports. Also, if you form a joint venture, there is a piece of paper that comes with your welcome letter called a certificate of compliance. Just send that back to us once your joint venture is formed. That way we know that it actually exists. And for the mentor, what's the mentor responsible for doing? Just doing what they said that they need to do. That's pretty much it. And I'll hit that question about selecting a mentor in a little bit. I just want to make sure I get through these points. So I talked about a few of these in a previous slide, but just so that you know what all these terms are, you have voluntary terminations. I'm starting on the left. Voluntary terminations is just that. Either party can terminate at any time. The effective date is 30 days from when both parties know about that termination. And that's a typo there. What I meant to say was program terminations. And program terminations are unilaterally done from SBA. Usually the reason is non-compliance. So the protege has 30 days from the actual anniversary date, which is on the welcome letter, to actually submit the annual evaluation each year. And if that's not done, we reserve the right to terminate that agreement. Again, this is a federal program. We report to Congress. We need to know how it's going. So if you don't tell us, then we're not getting that valuable information that we need, and we'll assume that there are no developmental gains that are being gained. Amendments, this is any change to the MPA. This one I could do a presentation on by itself, but for the sake of time, it could be an administrative change, which may be a point of contact or a phone number, or you got a new address, or it can be very substantive in nature where you're changing the actual types of business assistance. An example could be, my bonding was okay at the beginning of this relationship. We were going after a smaller dollar magnitude. Now, everything's going really well. We're going after bigger projects, but my bonding doesn't really support that. So my mentor is helping out with that. And so I'm going to add that type of assistance into the MPA. Another type of amendment that happens, and I don't really have a lot of time to go into this one, but it's when the mentor, usually the mentor, is purchased by a third party. And that is where it gets a bit convoluted, and we actually need to take a look at what that relationship looks like and determine whether that original mentor has survived that relationship or whether they are, somewhere in the Maldives sipping on the cocktail and they are no longer in any way part of that company. We need to know about that and then make a determination as to whether that amendment is acceptable. Annulments and substitutions I discussed already, so for the sake of time, I'm going to skip past those. And again, if you do not comply with submitting an annual evaluation every year, we do reserve the right to terminate. We can terminate, however, for a multitude of reasons and not just that. Okay, and I do want to, I've got a few minutes. I will answer that question, but if you guys don't mind, I want to hit joint ventures because this is where the money is. So I got to talk about it because you got questions about it. So this is just a slide just to kind of keep in mind so that you have the basics, and yes, you will have access to the slides. So you got to get your MPA first before your joint venture. We do not review or approve JVs. The district office approves JVs for sole source only if they are the servicing district office for an 8A. MPA JVs are therefore granted exclusions from affiliation. That means a small and other than small can come together, do an MPA, do a JV, go after contracts without being found to be affiliated on that fact alone. JVs may earn unlimited contracts in 2 years. So no more 3 and 2, unlimited. Procuring activities must consider past performance individually. This is something I hadn't chatted about, but this is a stance that SBA also took in 2020, which basically says, hey, contracting activities, you have to consider the past performance of everyone, of all the partners and the joint venture entity. We didn't say what that looked like. We just say you got to look at it. Just consider it. And so again, or actually, I hadn't really mentioned this one. As far as performance of work, protege firms must perform at least 40%. Mentors may perform up to 60%. Please remember the at least and up to. So at least 40%. So as a small business, you can actually do more. As a mentor, you can't do more than 60%. Just keep that in mind. Okay. And I don't think I have time to go through these quiz questions, but I will tell you this, I do not reinvent the wheel. So if you want to go dumpster diving in the Federal Register for the 2020 rule change, that actually explains both of these slides. I think, let me go ahead and answer those questions. And I think that's it, because the rest of these are just resources so that you know where to research questions that you may have before coming to us. And this is our site, our active list of MPAs that exist, and then how to put together your joint venture. Okay, so let me hit that question real quick.
And KA, one came at 142 as well from Byron Moody. Did you see that one? I can read it to you.
If the MPA is a 2-year agreement, but we win a 5 or 10 year, blah, blah, blah. Are the task orders beyond it? Yeah, so the contract, Byron, is just the base. It's not the task orders. So eligibility is determined at the time that you submit that first proposal to include price. Now, the thing that I'm going to add, because I just want you to remember, I want everyone to remember, at the 5-year mark, the CEO pretty much has to come to you at that point and say, okay, you guys doing great, good times. I need you to recertify your size. And at that time, you as an entity, and then the joint venture, of course, can basically recertify that size as need be. And that is me saying that my own clock is up. So I did maintain time, Jill. I did it. I didn't overtalk. But Byron, hopefully I answered your question. Also, I want to answer the one that came in at 149. I'm in the wellness industry and new to government contracting, not sure how to really use this program. So would you provide an example that you've seen in the past? So the basic thing for you to find out, and you got Joey on the call too, so he can speak more specifically to this, even more so than I can. But you know, all that aside, what you need to work on is figuring out if and then who is buying what you're selling. So you've got Roman who is on today, and you know, he'll talk about size and NAICS codes and all that good stuff. So you need to attach what it is that you're doing to a specific NAICS code. And then look in one resource is FPDS-NG, and Joey can help you with that. And then you can look by NAICS code and figure out like, okay, so these are some of the requirements that are out there. This is who is buying them. And then this is who they're awarding those contracts to. And then once you figure that out, something else that you can do is start getting your capability statement together, start looking at capability briefings, and finding those points of contact that are usually in the Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization, otherwise known as the OSDBU office, and they can link you up with contracting officers. That's like a really high level of steps, but essentially find out who's buying what you're selling, whether someone's buying what you're selling. Get yourself marketing together, approach those entities, look at their forecasting information. Every agency does a little bit differently, which is tedious for you, I know. But you know, forecasting will tell you what's coming down the pipeline. So hopefully that answered your question at a higher level, but you've got experts like Joey. So he can help you even, you know, more intimately than I can on this call.
Very good. And I saw another question earlier. Where do we go to select a mentor? Hang on, that's Shonda. Hang on just a second.
Sure, I'll answer that while you take that, Jill. Okay, so where do you go to find mentors? This is where I like to tell people to date before you marry, right? So we have an active list, and I almost hate to mention this because I know you're gonna look it up. I'm just don't do it. Just don't do it. So we have an active list of mentor protege agreements, and that is not where I want you to go to find a mentor. I don't want you to be a side piece. I do not want you to be a side firm. These mentors are already in committed relationships. That's why I'm telling you don't do it. Okay, so when you're looking at FPDS, like I was telling Tiara, then you want to see which firms are actually getting awarded all those contracts that you're interested in. And then some of the people you can actually do those capabilities briefings with are not just federal entities, but also with the primes. And then perhaps through some of those relationships, you guys can kind of date a little bit. And by dating, I mean subcontracting. So perhaps they have a requirement that is about to get awarded, and they're like, you know what, you know, you do, you know, electrical work on such and such contract at this courthouse. I just made that up. I need someone to do some contracting work. You know, let's get together and kind of work out the terms of that agreement, and there a possible relationship can bloom. So I tend to suggest working with smaller firms and also dating before you marry, which means maybe you guys should have a subcontract together first. That's a little less risky. You're not using up one of your two possible MPAs. It's just a little bit of a training environment for you in a way where you can learn the forms, learn the processes, learn the ropes, figure out if you guys have the same value set really. And you know, if you guys continue to work better together over a number of contracts, then maybe you can talk about forming a mentor protege agreement together. I'll go to the next question.
Well, and I want to also provide a shameless plug for the Ohio Business Matchmaker, which is on May 3rd and 4th. That we have a reception the night of the first day of training just for business to business networking. So while SBA can't identify a mentor for you, or if you're a mentor or protege for you, networking events, industry days, any type of event where there are interested parties, like groups of small businesses coming together, or all businesses coming together that want to do business with the government, that is an opportunity for you to open that discussion of teaming. And it may not be a mentor protege agreement out of the gate. It might be prime sub at new, or just discussions, you know. So yes, Benjamin, I will put the date of the matchmaker and a link to registration in the chat. That's all I wanted to add to that, KA. Thank you.
Sure. We got a few minutes left, so I think there's 2 questions I need to tackle. So this is a good one. If a prime has approached you as a protege and already has, I'm going to assume that's contracts in mind for you. What should I be looking for, requesting for them? Well, if they already have something in place, then, you know, having a conversation about what those requirements look like, what it is they want you to do, you know, what kind of arrangement, or I should say maybe not arrangement, but the terms of the contract. You know, maybe that's something you guys can begin discussing, you know, the time frames, the type of work, just all the terms of the arrangement. So yeah, I mean, if they already have something in mind, then awesome. You know, just kind of get some more information on that and see if you can move forward with one or more of those opportunities. And there's a bunch that came in the last minute or so. Matt, I'll get to yours next. So, okay. This might be for you, Jill. Do the vendors have a booth to talk to interested parties, or do government agencies have a booth for vendors to go to?
Sure, I can just cover that real quick. So at the matchmaker, it's actually the buyers that have tables. And when I say buyers, I mean government agencies. So we invite federal, state, city, county, municipality agencies to participate, as well as prime contractors. We will also have a lenders row. So lenders, prime contractors, government agencies are all considered buyers for this event, and they will have booths. So you, as the small business service provider or supplier, will have a time where you can go and meet with them in scheduled matchmaking. So when you register for the matchmaker, you will have to put in NAICS codes. And those NAICS codes will provide you with business matches. You'll be assigned a time to go and meet with the agency / prime contractor / lender. Or if you don't have any NAICS codes, there are also unscheduled matchmaking. So half the day, like it goes in rotation. So for example, from 9 to noon, it's unscheduled matchmaking. And then from 1 to 3, it's scheduled. I think it's a little bit, it might be 9 to 10:30 scheduled, 10:30 to noon unscheduled. So we try and give everyone an opportunity. So hopefully that answered your question. And let's see.
I think that's it, Jill.
Wonder, you know what? You are just a joy to listen to, because I feel like I learned something as well, and just in keeping it positive, and it really is a great program. You do have to. It is, and you have to go about it with the right goals in mind. And sometimes, just like Kay, I just want to just foot stomp what KA mentioned. Just because Boeing is a multi-billion-dollar company doesn't mean they would make the best mentor. And sometimes, or maybe they might. It just graduated 8A firms or other small businesses that have done government contracting, and they may be other than small.
Focus on that, Jill. What was the last part of that sentence? That's done government contracting?
Yes, absolutely. They have to have done government contracting.
Where the protege has all the experience. I'm like, come on.
No, we've had that before where, and they might be a $1 million,
Oh my goodness.
multi-million-dollar company. And if they've never done federal contracting, you're both learning it at the same time.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a little no bueno, but you know, that's up to you guys. I didn't say no to that firm. I'm not gonna say no to you, but you know, you want to give my opinion, or maybe you didn't. I'm all into giving unsolicited advice, but my unsolicited advice is get a mentor with experience. You can't
Yes, because
figure out
it's a
how to
different,
wax on and wax off separately. Like you
different
got to do it
culture.
together.
Government's a different culture. And then you also want to have a mentor that's culturally aligned with your values as a business.
Absolutely.
Because where I've seen it gone wrong is there were misunderstandings, maybe a different company culture. Those are things that you need to have discussions with a potential mentor or a potential protege before you hop on board. Thank you again so much, KA. It has been a pleasure. We are going to switch gears here and go to the panel discussion, which I know will be lively. I'm super excited for it. So I see that my colleague Shonda Harris has joined. Shonda and panelists, if you wouldn't mind turning your cameras on. And Shonda's actually going to lead this part of the presentation. Well, she's going to lead the panel.
I'm going to unshare if that's okay.
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much, KA. I am sorry that I had to miss some of the presentation and I just came in at the tail end, but I'm sure that everyone learned some valuable information to help prepare you if you are looking to be a protege, or if you're already in a mentor-protege relationship, some best practices that could definitely help you. So again, my name is Shonda Harris, and I'm a BOS, Business Opportunity Specialist here in the Columbus District Office. I work alongside Jill Nagy-Reynolds, and we are going to continue on our discussion with the mentor-protege relationship. Now that you have an overview, we're going to actually allow you to hear from two mentor-protege relationships that we have here in the district. So I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. If you're just joining us, we are still recording. The recording will be made available after this session. It takes maybe about a week or a few days to be finalized so you can have access to this. But this next session is going to really hone in where you're going to allow, you'll be able to receive just some best practices, some tips from our mentors and our proteges. So I'm again going to allow them to introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and kick off. I do have some questions that I can start off the conversation and discussion, and I'm sure once it gets started, we'll go from there. If you do have questions, you can, of course, put them in the chat, and then we can see where we can also have your questions asked as well. With that said, I know one of our panelists, Teresa and Bob, they do have one of their capability statements. So if Bruce and Raul, if you also have one, if you want to get that prepared while you introduce yourselves, you can actually put that on the screen and maybe take about 5 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes to introduce yourselves. And then we will go to Bruce and Bob. So I'm gonna.
Are you gonna share our thing, or you want us to do that?
Do you have it available?
Of course. I mean,
Okay.
it's big, but I've got it right in front of me here. Let me make it a little bit more readable. Okay, that'll work. I might have to scroll around it. Let's see. Share my screen. I'm gonna do that. Okay.
While you're doing that, I believe KA is still going to join us. So she's definitely, as they're giving feedback, we also may get some feedback from her as well.
Can you see that screen now?
It is, yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. This isn't the whole thing. I'll roll around on it if you guys want to take a look at that. Of course, Bob and I are happy to. So first of all, I've got to apologize. I've been on Teams and my camera and lighting are all really good. And something about Zoom today, this is the second time I've been on a Zoom call. I look like Casper the Friendly Ghost. For those of you that are near my age and that know who Casper is. I'm actually Filipino. I just don't look it. I look more like I'm not from the Philippines. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm Teresa McElroy. I work with MacLogic. I am the protege to Quantec Technical Services. Bob Paradiso is his company. Quantec Services is our mentor. We have had a long and wonderful relationship. You can see on the screen now, this is Innovate Now, so our mentor protege relationship, of course, as you guys have all heard from KA, great job KA, by the way, is, that mentor protege relationship. But Innovate Now is one of the joint ventures that we have created out of that mentor protege relationship that allows us to go forward without affiliation and bid on contracts. We have the OASIS pools 1 and 3 contracts, and you can see some of our past performance listed here, as well as some of our accreditations. I'll roll down a little bit, but we do kind of a broad swath of things. We have, a facility clearance. I know that the rules have changed, but when we first started our JV, the JV itself had to be cleared. And now I know that SBA's position is that as long as Quantec and MacLogic are cleared, which we are. So anyway, it's a little different going forward. Anyway, that's kind of our thing. So MacLogic is a woman-owned small business, an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business, headquartered near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base outside of Dayton, Ohio. And I'm the CEO. And I think, Shonda, is that the intro? Do you want me to tell you a little bit about what we do individually versus, because I could just talk for this whole hour and nobody that nonsense. So I think that'll help. And then maybe Bob, over to you, our mentor,
Yes.
to talk a little bit about Quantec.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob Paradiso. I'm with Quantec Services, Vice President for Business Development and Growth here at Quantec, located in Lexington, Massachusetts. We are the mentor to MacLogic for this beautiful joint venture called Innovate Now. When we started down this path, we've known each other for a number of years. We were actually, MacLogic was on a Quantec team. We were on a MacLogic team. So we did understand business relations with each other. So we weren't new to knowing each other. We decided to go after and create this joint venture. And in fact, we're ready to launch JV number 2. And in our first JV, we started bidding contracts. We're actually, in the running for some significant awards coming up here in June with our contracts. Quantec itself brought a lot of qualifications to the table, which was beneficial to MacLogic, not only from qualifications from a contract perspective, but from a business standards perspective, our accounting systems, security systems, things of that nature, our pipeline. So we did share a lot of information and teaching from a mentor perspective to the protege. But yet Teresa is hands-on in our proposal development, our proposal review. She's spot on with comments and structuring and win themes for our proposals. Teresa, I wish I had the number off the top of my head, but we bid 12 proposals last year, maybe 10 proposals last year.
Easily.
Easily, yeah.
It was a very busy bid year.
It was a busy year.
Mhm.
And we're going to be moving off to the Oasis Plus contracts coming up here and over the
Awesome.
summer, along with continuing bids on the original Oasis contract. Quantec is a pools 4, 5, and 6, 5A, 5B, and 6 holder on the Oasis contracts, and now we have the pools 1 and 3, similar to Sierra Tech in the work that they're doing on their JV. And you can see the qualifications and the type of work Quantec does across the board, supporting Air Force, Missile Defense Agency, in the internet, our IC community, our intelligence community work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Teresa and Bob. Now we'll hear from our second mentor and protege relationship, Raul Sierra and Bruce Moyer.
All right,
Well,
I'll start off, Raul, if you don't mind. I like the
Sure.
flow that Teresa introduced there. We'll let the small guy talk and let the big guy hold out the umbrella. So I apologize. I don't have a Fury Solutions. That's the name of our joint venture Mentor Protégé that we have. I don't have a SLIC for that available at this time. However, you can go out to our website, bisisolutions.com, and we do have a page up there that talks about our total capabilities. I also want to let Kay know that she did a great job. I actually don't see a lot that we can contribute. I mean, you guys really hit all the points that were both important in our success and also what was important to even establishing the relationship with between Sierra Tech and BISI. So again, my name is Bruce Moyer. I am the co-owner, along with my son, of BISI Solutions. We're based out of Dayton, Ohio. We've been in business since 2012. I left a larger business in order to start this business with my son when he graduated college. So I personally have a 20-year plus history doing government contracting. That's one point that Kay and team brought up a little earlier, which is critical to being successful in this business. Sierra Tech, which is our protege, uses, we built that relationship around both of our needs, right? I think what was extremely important is that I believe that Sierra Tech used us for a particular purpose, and we also did the same thing with them. We also have the same sort of culture that allows us to work together and be very successful. We've won one opportunity so far this year, and our JV actually started in, I think it was approved in January July of this year, I believe. And we've already won a $50 million opportunity. So we've been successful, and I absolutely think we'll be successful going forward. Raul?
thank you, Bruce. Raul Sierra, I'm the president and CEO of Sierra Tech. I'm a protege on two joint ventures and also a mentor to BISI on this joint venture. So we've been through the program with Peerless, and that joint venture already came to an end last year, and then we have another one with CDO Technologies. So we're quite familiar with the process and the program. Like Bruce said, we got this relationship got approved last year, and right away we bid on a contract that we were quite familiar with, and that we've been talking about for 4 years probably, and we were successful. So just to kind of repeat some of the things that have been said already, familiarity is it's probably key to the relationship, because this goes back. I believe BISI, I was just looking at my records. You guys were a subcontractor to us back in 2015, so we're talking 8 years, kind of following the same steps that we talked about a little earlier. So glad to be here and ready to answer any questions.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for the introductions. And I think it's, Raul, you're in a wonderful, unique position. You probably don't find a lot of companies that have been both not as many, both a protege and now or a mentor. It's a great position to be in. So you may be able to add some unique experiences and feedback as we go on with our discussion. But just to kind of kick things off, and I think I will allow and pose this question to the proteges. What steps did you take to find your mentor? I know I actually have worked with Teresa. It was one of the 8A firms we helped to support. I've worked with some other firms, and it took them about 2 or 3 years to find the right match, the right fit as it relates to the mentor. So what advice, kind of talk about your journey, and then kind of give some tips or advice, suggestions of what others should be looking for in the right mentor.
So for MacLogic, we I was a pretty experienced government contractor. So I wasn't looking for somebody to teach me the ropes of how to respond to a proposal, an RFP, or to do any of that thing. What I was looking for was somebody to assist us in developing some more mature processes in specific areas. So that was in our pricing approaches, that was in some of our contracts management and that sort of thing. We had worked with Quantec both as a sub to them and as a prime for them on a couple of small jobs over several years. And I also personally knew Jim and a couple of other folks on his, who's the owner, and then and Bob Paradiso and some of the people in this company. So when we started talking about putting a joint venture together, it really was a mutual benefit arrangement, right? So we were looking to get some mentoring in that area, some process area. And of course, at the time we were in 8A, we were in the 8A Business Development Program. We have graduated from that, but of course we're also at WOSB. So what we did was we said, well, what makes sense here with regard to our ability, Macalogic's ability to bid on larger opportunities that we would not have had the past performance for. And so Quantec could bring that. We could bring capability around, like I said, proposal development, as well as some past performance. And so I would say anybody who was looking to go find a mentor, if you're a protege and you're looking to find a mentor, first and foremost, make sure that you know the senior managers and decision makers in the company that you're going to be working with, and make sure that you're aligned with and comfortable with the culture of the company that you're going to go work with. And when I say culture, I don't, you can interpret that word a million different ways, right? When I say culture, I mean things like you already have a business relationship that you've worked through. Do you both pay your bills at the same kind of way that you pay your bills? Do you both have similar approaches and benefits around your people and people retention and people attraction and that sort of thing? I think that if I'm a very small business, which I am, one of the things that attracted me to the Quantec partnership was Jim Monopoly and Bob Paradiso and others on their staff. They're more than willing to share ideas. I'll call it, inside baseball, like, hey, this is how we really look at things. And I think having a mentor that is willing to be open with you and work with you on a continuing basis, I think is a key to success. So as a protege, make sure that it's somebody that you want to hang out with, and that, as I like to say, if it's somebody that you're willing to break bread with. If you're not willing to break bread with them, do not think that you're going to team up and everything's going to be all good, because you're going to have tough times, and you need to be able to have open, honest, and back and forth communication on a variety of topics. So find a company that aligns with you professionally and personally.
Professionally and personal. Great tips.
So I don't know how I can add to that, Teresa. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head there. As with your relationship with Bob and Co, Raul and I go way back. And so I know, even before he had his business, I knew him, and I know kind of his ethics and the things that were important to him. And those same things are important to me, right? And so I knew also that if there was some issue, that we could have a conversation, we could have a frank conversation, because as Teresa said, there are going to be issues. And also, as far as my side is concerned, I'm an open kimono kind of person. I'm going to let you see all the dirty laundry. And so I have to have a partner that I'm working with that's willing to look at that and go, I can help you. I can help you wash the linen. I can tell you how to wash linen, right? And so, and further with Teresa said, and kind of going back to what I said earlier about a tool, is you got to be looking for something out of that relationship that's meaningful to your organization, right? And not just chase the money, right? You've got to be, for instance, with my relationship with Raul, with Ceratec, and oh, by the way, I actually have I'm a protege with another entity as well, which is going quite well. And it's the same sort of relationship. But in regards to the reason Raul and I hit it off, it was started this relationship. It was probably more from a tool perspective, is he was looking for a certain NAICS code. He was looking for a certain culture. He was looking for somebody who we knew we could trust. And then I was looking to expand in a certain area. I was looking for a relationship. I was looking for someone who could help me improve our processes because we are a small company as well. And so I was looking for particular items that he could help me with, and he has them. And so you can't be, I don't know if I'd say break bread, because in this business, we all go to lunch and make vague and ambiguous promises about what we're going to do and how we're going to help each other. And right. But what I would definitely say is that it's somebody that you would invite to your house for dinner, right? Somebody you would, or at least that kind of close relationship, right? And it may not work for everybody, but it certainly worked for us.
All right, wonderful. Before we go to the mentors, I noticed that in both your relationships that you not only knew your mentor, but you worked for them. I heard Raul say that Bruce, you were a subcontractor for them some years back. And I know Teresa had known her mentor for some years and had done some work with them. How important would you say, not just knowing the individual, your mentor, but having worked with them prior to entering into that relationship? Is that important? Would you recommend that? Bruce, you want to start off? Do you think that would add to the success?
Sure. I think it's extremely important. However, I would caveat with that to say that, you know, given where your competencies and your customers are as a small business, you might not have had that capability. But it's very important to, and I'll give an example. You may not have the same thought process on pricing, which is very important when you're putting proposals together, right? And so if you haven't worked with them together, then how are you going to know that they mesh? Because everybody will smile at that breaking bread session, right? But when it really gets down to it, and you know, there's a discrepancy on pricing or approach to pricing, can you get through that? And that's where it goes back to having a deeper relationship. And in my case, it was the folks I'm working with in both my mentors. Those are the owners of the company or someone high up in that C-suite that I know can make decisions, right? And those decisions will be adhered to internally to the mentor organization.
So I'll add to that I think that for me, it was really helpful that we had worked together. But I have to say that if I'm a small business out there and I am thinking that the best way for me to go in and learn about the federal space or be more involved in the federal space, first of all, I do think trying a teaming avenue so that you do have that experience like Bruce and I both had the opportunity to have. But I also think if you do choose to go down the mentor path, if that's, you know, you're hell bent for leather going to go for that, I strongly advise that you do as much background research as you can on the company, that you call all your friends of friends, and you check out the company that you're going to be working with to the extent that you're able to do that. You know, do internet research. If you're in the SBA's program, talk to your BOS and see if they have experience with those companies. And definitely just make sure that you are in that first 18 months before you can get, as KA calls it, the annulment. Make sure that you're really exercising that mentor protege agreement in that 18 months so that you are absolutely 1,000% sure that this is the right thing for you and your company and for your mentor.
All right, wonderful. So if they don't have any prior experience on projects as a sub or whatnot, definitely doing some dating and doing some teaming beforehand to see if it's a good fit, even though it may appear to be, but actually getting that experience in before you would recommend.
Yeah, absolutely, if it's possible. Like I said, I think not every company is going to be able to have that opportunity. And if they really want to go into this kind of a relationship, it is a good avenue for learning about the business. But you know, you have to really check yourself and make sure that you're, if you're a very small business, but if you're a medium or larger size business and you are going to enter the federal space and you've been in the commercial space all along, check yourself and make sure you're willing to listen to what your mentor has to say, because it is a different culture and it is a slightly different approach to commercial space. If you're a very small business, I think you probably would be more inclined to listen to what your mentor has to say, but they are providing you pearls of wisdom and you should pay attention. If you're willing to get into a relationship, then, you know, listen to what they say.
Listen to what they say. Thank you. Now we want to also hear from the mentors and just, I'm sure you have options of different, small businesses that you could have as a protege. So what are some of the things that you kind of look for, Bob and Raul, to say, okay, this is the right fit for our company as it relates to entering into a mentor protege relationship, especially since you may have, the opportunity to choose amongst 2, 3, 4, or 5 different companies. What advice would you give those that are looking to be mentors?
It's I'm going to echo what Teresa just said. A great example is we get into Oasis contracts, and that period of performance on Oasis contract is longer than most marriages, right? So you need to really do your due diligence that you're going to attach yourselves to this company for the next 10 years. And maybe win a contract at the 10-year point and still have 5 more years of execution to go through. So that's a 15-year relationship you're committing to on a mentor protege, on a joint venture. So we met with Teresa and her team lots, down in Virginia, in Dayton, Ohio, been out to dinner together, talked things over, really got to know each other we knew each other from a business perspective because of Macologic and Quantec. But we got to know each other from a relationship perspective. And Jim and I are Italian. So, relationships mean a lot to us. So, it's all in the family. And in being able to go out and have dinner and understand each other, what their expectations are, what our expectations are, where do we want to take this, where do we want to grow, what type of work do we want to go after, our philosophy of executing work. Our benefit structures, do they align? Do we match up on benefit structures to execute work? A whole sort of items that you learn about each other and go over. And we're submitting joint proposals. We're submitting a mentor protege JV proposal. We've been through a protest together, which we got the SBA involved, and we won on a protest with the Air Force because they didn't listen to our argument relative to an MP joint venture. And they ignored us, and we won. We didn't win the work. We didn't think we'd win the work after submitting the protest, but we won the protest and we got reimbursed for our attorney's fees. And you know what? A lot of small businesses called Teresa and called myself, and they said, "Thank you very much. Thank you for doing this. You did a lot for the small business community with what just happened." And our phone goes off a lot with small companies, especially now that Oasis Plus is coming out. People want to jump on that bandwagon that probably got limited to it the last time, weren't allowed into the process, and it's a new process. And we get a lot of phone calls, and we talk to everybody, but we're going to maintain the ship. We always intended to take Innovate Now and create Innovate Always out of it, and spin that up to what we call JV 2.0, and continue the work that we started. We know each other, we trust each other, we argue with each other. It's like a marriage, and we solve problems together, and we have fun. So that's what it's all about.
I like that. And it kind of sounds like, just to kind of sum it up, your perspective is looking at the longevity of it, not just looking at, okay, how can we get into this mentor protege relationship and go after 1 or 2 contracts and make a couple of dollars, but it's a long-term relationship that you're looking at 5, 10 years down the road, and something that will be beneficial, not just for today, but also for tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Raul.
Yeah, and I like to add to that, because there are different stages too, as to when and why you need to have a mentor protege joint venture. In our case, we're still a small company, and we are growing. So there's a lot of hard work that's into contracts that we currently have or have had, customers that we've had, that we just honestly we can't compete in that area anymore because we're too big, either money wise or employee wise. So what do we do with that experience, right? you have to find a trusted ally, somebody that you can bring along and, coach them in the things that you've learned, customer wise and project wise, and hopefully, continue to serve the customer and be able to pass on some of the knowledge that you've gained in the last few years. Yeah, I mean, it'll be fantastic if I were at the stage where, Quantec is, size-wise and experience-wise, well, we're not. We're still growing in some areas, but there are some areas that we've worked really hard that helped us get where we're at, and hopefully helps BISI, grow as well. So, it's a good tool to help a smaller company grow, especially when they're starting. I think before we won this last contract, I forget, but I think Bruce was their employee maybe, and size-wise, probably the size of his company, just one win. So, like I said, it's not all companies are the same in the same stage, so that's what I feel like we're a little bit unique, that we can still be. We need to start mentoring companies that are small enough, but we still need mentoring from larger companies to accomplish the goals that we've set. So, okay,
That's a great point. I want to ask, just kind of throw this out to everyone, because I'm sure we have small businesses that are at various different stages, some that may not be as advanced as you. And I've worked with a lot of small businesses that are just getting started, and they don't have, let's just say, they don't have that federal past performance. So they're really looking to get that first contract. And they may not be looking at a mentor protege relationship from a longevity perspective, but more so about, we really just want to get that first contract. So they're really looking at the dollar signs. So what type of advice would you give to small companies that are looking to enter into a mentor protege relationship, and they're really just looking at it just all about the money and the dollars, and they may be blind to some things that they may see, and they may overlook some of the advice that you're giving? So what would you recommend that they do if they're just looking at just dollar signs? Anybody can.
If you're a small company trying to get into the program, and if you're on dollar signs, you still should have your own infrastructure ready to go. You can't rely on a mentor to just, where you can just come, okay, well, I'm an 8A company, or I'm a SDVOSB under 12, which I think is one of the lower NAICS, and think that just because you have a company set up, somebody's just gonna come in and pick you up. You have to have, at a minimum, your own infrastructure. Good accounting system, good, like Bruce and BISI and CRTech, we started using the same HR systems, just to kind of make it easier if we're working together in opportunities, things like that. But you have to have your own, some processes and some infrastructure, rather than just think that you can, it's going to take some investment up front, be able to contribute besides just being a small business.
So in other words, they kind of have to already have some skin in the game themselves,
right,
before they look to get into that.
Necessarily, there's got to be some investment, some experience, but there's nothing worse than even as a subcontractor, right? That you start hearing from your customer, hey, what's going on with the small company you brought in here? They're not providing the personnel, or people who are not qualified, or the employees are not getting paid on time. I mean, you hear all kinds of horror stories. You just got to be honest with yourself and be ready, to contribute to the relationship.
All right, be ready. All right, love that. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Shonda, you know me for a long time, so you're looking at my face going,
It just already, I knew.
chomping at the bit. I'm like,
Waiting.
oh, I have things to say.
I was waiting, I knew, and I want you to say it.
Yeah, so if you are looking at this, if you're in my position and you're a small business, and what you're going to offer is, here's my socioeconomic status, and you can come use my 8A, use my EDWOSB, use my hub zone, use my whatever, and you go to a larger business and you somehow push that through. Well, then to Raul's point, you're still going to have to show up with people, with being able to make payments, with being able to manage people's benefits, pay taxes, do all of those other things. What you're doing is now going to also reflect on your mentor. So if you choose to do that, then you better check yourself and make sure that you are prepared to deliver. And also, you better be ready to be, quite frankly, let the mentor tell you what to do then. I mean, if that is your business model, then that's your business model. But when we entered into the relationship with Quantec, we had processes and sort of things in place. Now, did we go to them and say, hey, we're doing this way. Is there a better way to do it? Yes, absolutely we did. And Jim and his entire company and Bob, from a business development perspective, they have been more than generous in assisting us and saying, here's a template, you can use this. But it isn't, if you're in it just for the money, then you better be prepared to be the dog getting wagged by the tail or whatever that goes. And that's, can you tell I don't recommend that? But that's just, it's an opinion. It's an opinion. Isn't it? And I think Bob and Bruce and Raul, who know me pretty well, just like Shonda does, and Jill knows me, they're all going, yeah, don't ask Teresa a load of questions. She'll always trigger. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. Direct, forthright.
So if I can just jump in there.
Yes.
This may be, this might not be the way that most people think about it. I just wouldn't do it until I was ready. It's, I have a saying that all money's not good money, right?
Yes.
And so until I was ready, and I should say that I've known Teresa and Raul for a long time. And I know that when they started their business, they were already mature, and at least they understood that you need, they understood the things that you need, whether they had them or not. And so I was in the same position where I understood what I needed and what whether I had it or not. And I also understood that some of the people that were around me supporting me as a very small, a micro business, weren't the people I could take to the next level because they didn't have the skill set. So I had to be prepared for that thing. So I would just say, just be prepared, and not all money, not all opportunity is good opportunity. And it leads into everything we've talked about so far, that especially you guys mentioned the really larger companies, the Lockheed Martins and some of those other larger companies, they will use and abuse you, right? And some other companies are like that. And that's not I would say that's not a pleasant experience. So just make sure that you're ready for that step when you take it, if you're chasing it just for the money.
Very wonderful. Thank you. Also want to just ask, and this is for everyone, what are some of because it sounds like both of your relationships, each of you speak highly of them, just some best practices that you can share with the participants on how to maintain a positive business relationship?
Talk a lot.
Yeah, talk a lot.
Communicate, be clear. I have Bob's cell phone number. He's got mine. And when I'm going on vacation, I don't just tell the people in my headquarters office. Quantec knows that I'm going on vacation, and they know where I'm going and whether I'm reachable or not. It is about persistent, ongoing communication. And like all relationships, that isn't always, hi, what's the pipeline looking like this week? Sometimes it's, hi, how are things going? I know your son just graduated from college. How was the celebration? Oh, it was great. All right, good. Now let's talk about business. So I think that one of the greatest things that has helped our relationship is that I can pick up the phone and call Bob or Jim, or actually several other members of the Quantec team, and say, hey, what the hey is going on here? And they can do the same on this end. And because we've already got the relationship established, when things get a little wonky, we're able to look at each other. And I know, even if I don't agree with Bob, I know already where Bob's heart is. I know what Bob wants to be doing and what I want to be doing, and professionally, that we are aligned, even if we're looking at going after the goal slightly differently. We respect the living bejesus out of each other. So that is to me the way you keep a mentor-protege relationship healthy and strong.
So it's truly like a relationship.
Work 3 or 4 proposals together. You'll learn what relationships all about. I mean, it really is. When you're in the trenches, working a proposal for 60 days or 30 days straight, working pricing, having pricing calls on Saturdays, whatever, it's all about communication. We have a standing meeting on, I think, every other Wednesday. Teresa has calls with Jim, who's the owner of Quantec, Jim Monopoly. They have calls constantly scheduled on their calendar. I think it's every other Tuesday or Wednesday. So it's a lot of communications, and when things are popping, it's all hands on deck, and a lot of people wear their emotions on their sleeves, but we're all have the same shirt on, moving in the same forward motion.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, communication, obviously our relationship is pretty mature. Our joint venture is not, we're still kind of getting this thing going. I don't think we've not had it for a year yet, but we continue to communicate, not only to see new opportunities, but also to see how our current joint work is going, and that's not only at mine and Bruce's level, but also our program managers and our business development people, just so we can hopefully continue to accomplish the goals that we set out, and to make sure that Bruce and BISI feel comfortable as to what we're doing. Yeah, it's nothing worse than you haven't heard from a mentor in a month.
Wow.
That's that's not good. You know what I mean? So yeah, communications is key. Absolutely.
Well said.
So-
I have nothing else to add. Well said.
It sounds like constant communication, not just
Right.
constant communication. All right. Well, with that, what are some things that in maintaining that positive business relationship, what are some things that you would recommend to do? And what are some things maybe not to do? So you've given some best practices on some things. Okay, yes, communication, what you should do to maintain that. But what are some things that you would recommend not to do to keep that healthy relationship going and that communication open? Because I'm sure you've probably learned, a couple of things over the years.
In my experience, from protege and a mentor as well, don't forget you still have your company.
Talk about
Sometimes we
that.
tend to, and all of a sudden you look around and it's like, oh my goodness, the last 6 proposals I turned in, they were all with, in my case, with my peerless joint venture. Don't forget you still have a company, independent on its own, and at some point in time, you're going to have to figure out, what are you going to do with all the experience that you gain, individually and also with your, with your joint venture. So that's very, very, very important.
Be flexible. Be flexible.
Be flexible.
Flexibility. You got to be flexible. You got to be willing to pivot. Even if you're ingrained in something in the thought process, and you got to pivot in a different direction for the better of everybody, you got to pivot. You got to be flexible.
I'll just add, pay bills on time.
That's important.
That's important.
Very important. And if you can't, right, because you're small, if you can't, you have those, that goes back to discussions, but just pay your bills on time.
Yeah.
That's very, very important. And we've had the pleasure, Bob, of paying lawyers together too, so, Raul and I.
Yes.
So, but you've done that a couple times, you know, okay, you're real friends or you're not real friends.
Yeah, right. Hey, you know, they should have just listened to us. They would have saved themselves a lot of heartache, but, you know, sometimes our government counterparts on the contracting side think differently. But we got the help of the SBA, so, you know, we went to them and they supported our need and cause, and it was, that's a great relationship right there.
You're on mute, Teresa.
It's 2023 and people are still having to tell me I'm on mute. Oh, for heaven's sakes. Sorry, everybody. It was probably like, you know, the technology gods going, really, McElroy, stop talking. Okay, so what I was going to say is, you know, Bob alluded to the fact that Jim Monopoly, so he owns his company, I own my company. He and I meet separately from everybody else. It's just, I always like to say, just us girls, take our hair down, just the two of us. We have these conversations and we talk about everything. He talks to me about philosophy. He has been so generous in giving me just some advice. Like if I've had a key person resign or something, and I'm, you know, as a small business, I'm just like, oh my gosh, now what's going to happen? Jim has helped me with those sorts of things. And so I would suggest to proteges that if there's a possibility, you know, with Bruce and Raul, I know, you know, you guys are at the most senior levels of your company, but always be ready to have that conversation at senior levels, because sometimes at the mid levels, you know, at your various other parts of your company, whether it's in delivery or whether that's in proposal development, et cetera, they may start having contention amongst themselves, and you have to have, you know, an elevation, right? And you have to be able to arbitrate. And so the fact that Jim and I already can talk to each other and say, hey, I'm hearing this from my folks, or he's saying, I'm hearing this from his folks, we can often, I think, help resolve some of any kind of conflicts that might happen. So I would suggest that that's another thing that proteges and mentors both should look for, is the ability to continue a very senior level discussion that is kind of off the record, if you will.
Great points. Raul brought up something that I want to see if everybody can chime in on, because it sounds like once you get involved into the relationship, you start building them proposals, you get in the thick of things. How do you really find a good way to maintain a balance of giving enough time to the mentor-protege relationship for the joint venture, but also maintaining your company? How do you find that balance between, okay, I've done 3 or 4 proposals with the mentor-protege joint venture, now I need to focus on doing 1 or 2 proposals for my company? How do you find that or maintain that balance between, you know, your company and the mentor-protege relationship?
We've had proposals on both sides going on at the same time. You know, we've had a JV proposal being written. We've got another team. I mean, sometimes I get dizzy. And who are we talking to? What are we talking about here today? So but we've had multiple proposals going on at the same time, both from a Quantec perspective and the JV perspective, because like Bruce said, you know, you gotta remember, you got a company. So, you know, we have Quantec that, you know, pays our bills and pays my salary. And so we have to protect and shore up the sides of Quantec, obviously, and grow the JV at the same time. So it's not uncommon. As a small business owner, you know, you got a lot of balls in the air at the same time. And Teresa knows that also from her perspective. You know, she has people on her team, Bob Applebaum, he's on the execution side, executing work and writing management volume at night and transition volumes and commenting over the weekends and things of that nature, to and providing direct client support. So it's you do it all. You know, like Jim says, a small business owner, I spent 30 years, I was a senior civilian, retired out of the government, could have went to work for Booz Allen or one of those other large companies. And I chose to come to work for Quantec, because I know Jim, knew him very well for a long time. And small business status, I know how to change the toner cartridges. I know how to, we order supplies from Staples. So we got supplies in the kitchen to eat for snacks on the weekends. I mean, it's what you do as a small business.
I don't know how to do any of those things. I will tell you that right now. I thank God I don't have to, because you know what? We could just forget it. Take a picture on your phone. I will say this. I continue my relationships outside of the JV with other companies. I mean, for example, with Sierra Tech or with BISI, I have relationships. And as you know, Shonda, the federal government has a cycle of when they're putting out solicitations in various agencies. And so, there are times when we are working on a proposal for both Macalogic and the joint venture, but what we do is we just do them both, but it has a tendency. Now, what I will say is this. What we have done is, if I'm on a team, if one of my colleagues invites me to be on a team and we're trying to fill out that team, and I see an area where I think Quantech has past performance, could add value, I've reached out to Bob and said, hey, Bob, you guys want to come join the same team I'm on? And we've done that a few times, and vice versa. So I think that's how you maintain both a focus on your company as well as on the joint JV. Some things lend themselves to the joint venture for us because it's a larger opportunity. Some of the smaller ones are obviously our subcontractor opportunities. Those are Macalogic ones.
So the way that BISI, or at least the way that I approach it, is I make sure that I'm not the only one focused on it, right? There's someone else who has to have ownership of the opportunities that are related to our two different joint ventures, and also someone who's focused on growth both within our current customer set and in any area, either competency or customers that we're trying to grow into, right? And then we come together as a team, as I mentioned earlier. Not all, at least that's our the way we look at it. Not all money is good money, and so we really want to be strategic about what we're approaching. And I've been through those weekend readings, as you guys are calling them, and they may be energizing, but they're not fun, right? And so I try to limit that within our organization by being very specific on what we're going after, who we're partnering with, and as Teresa so eloquently put it, that there are some opportunities that Sierra Tech might lead, and we might not use the joint venture, right? There are some opportunities that I might lead, and they're just a member of the team. So, and again, that goes back to vetting those opportunities based on the resources you have and what your strategic vision is for your organization, and making sure you're not the only one worried about it internally, because you will, as a business owner, go try to stick your head in the sand someday, because you can't do it all, and you got to realize it.
Great feedback from everybody. Thanks. The next one, and this is for the mentors, just want to find out, how have some of your business mistakes kind of helped prepare you for greater success as a mentor? So I'm sure you've, had ups and downs, but, some of the mistakes that you've made, really using those to help, and sharing that and what you learned out of that. How were you able to translate that so that your proteges could learn from it and actually grow?
Well, I think you got to protect your protege a little bit, and I'll go back to the story from, probably 20 years ago, an unnamed joint venture that I know about.
An unnamed, okay, unnamed. For the record, it's unnamed.
Unnamed, complete misuse of the Mentor Protégé Program. At the time you were getting what, three awards in 2 years, right? And they tried to use one of the awards on a 4-person directed award, just to gain. True story. True story. You need to protect your protege. That's part of it, right? Isn't that Bob help me in your Italian background? Isn't that what protege means? Someone you protect.
Gotta protect. Yeah,
Protect.
it's a family. It's a family, right? It really is a family, and you gotta protect the family. We're not gonna use up one of those awards, though. That's all. But lessons learned is a continuous process, and you got to apply the lessons learned, just like you do with your children, right? You tell your kids, I said I didn't like you doing that. I've already said that once. Why are you doing it again? So you gotta be able to apply the lessons learned. We lose a proposal, we go back, we dissect it. Why do we lose it? What happened? What went wrong? Let's try to figure it out. Let's apply those lessons learned on the next future proposal or whatever it is on the joint venture. It could be, relationships. We could have a, hard time with something, and we got to go work that relationship and learn from that and how we handled ourselves. And it's like a family. You just gotta, there's not one thing I can point to that says this is exactly what we did and this is what we did wrong and this is how we fixed it, because you work through proposal process and you work through relationships all the time. You got to make it work. So family.
All right, that's great. Along those lines, even though you are both you and Raul are the mentors and you're providing guidance and expertise and sharing that with your proteges, I believe it may have been last year on our panel discussion, are you both open to also learning from your proteges and where they may teach you some things and being open to having them share best practices and tips and advice? Are you open to receive, from them? And then how important is that for others that are looking at a mentor-protege relationship to where they come into it and that they're not just always receiving, but would you recommend that they also be prepared to share some things with their mentor? And is that important?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We, Teresa might be a small business, but she's a powerful house. She knows a lot. And yeah, absolutely. That's she's got a lot of wisdom and great ideas. So we've learned a lot from that, from a Quantech perspective as the mentor. And I'm sure, she learns things from us on a monthly basis or a weekly basis or whatever. But yeah, we don't think of Teresa or Macalogic as, that 20-person company. I mean, it's there's a lot of information, a lot of knowledge there.
Especially if you pick the right relationship, like Bruce mentioned earlier, right? He didn't start this back, he started BISI in 2012, but he had a long Air Force career. He had a long career, as a contractor as well, where he learned a lot, so in a sense, we kind of, grew together and, learn from each other. So yeah, just, that's a mistake to think that your protege is a rookie. They're not, they're seasoned, experienced business people as well. So.
And I just want to add one other thing.
Sure.
Look where we are today. How long have we been in this mentor protege relationship, Teresa? 5 years, 4 years, 3 years?
It was officially approved in 19, I believe.
Yeah. And look what we've been through from a country perspective. I mean, we went through COVID together. We were on the phone, somebody got sick at Macalogic. We were calling. Somebody gets sick at Quantech. Teresa's calling. How they doing? What can we do? It's really, it really solidifies the relationship, I think, going through a national crisis or a world crisis in that state, that we're looking out for each other, not from just a business perspective, but from a family perspective, right? Again, back to the family.
Yeah.
Teresa, were you getting ready to share something?
Yeah, I was just saying, yeah, we went through COVID together. Absolutely. It's an interesting thing and an interesting perspective that, we were just right there. And the fact that, so my mentor is up in the Boston area, and that might seem like, well, gosh, there's such a distance there. I mean, quite frankly, COVID was a good thing for us insofar as everybody was getting used to using technology for their day-to-day. And it wasn't unusual to have Friday night. Y'all know this, y'all had Friday nights. I'm going to pour my beverage of choice and you're going to pour your beverage of choice. And we're going to have a Friday night, get together. You're at your house and I'm at mine. I mean, it was the way that the country and quite frankly, people around the world survived. So yeah, it's been a long, good relationship.
Yeah.
We're just, we don't see Bob Applebaum in the basement anymore.
Say that again.
He's joking. So when we first were in the pandemic time, my COO was always in the basement because his wife also worked from home. And so it was this terrible background. It was this basement. It was horrible. We would all make fun of him that his wife doesn't let him out of his basement. He now works with a little bit nicer environment.
That's funny.
Different times.
Different times. I was going to save this question to last, but since you talked about COVID, I think this is a great way to transition into this next question. Kind of as we are still kind of transitioning out of the pandemic, if you will, are there any key characteristics, best practices that you're implementing to keep the Mentor Protégé joint venture competitive in the post-pandemic market? So I'm sure there are lots of things that, it's not all, a lot of negative things did happen and, people had to learn to pivot, transition. But, out of this, I'm sure there's some key characteristics and best practices as things now, everything is moving to, being online. And now we're doing a lot of virtual trainings and whatnot. And I'm sure meeting with agencies. But what have you found that can kind of keep you on the cutting edge and keeping you competitive in this post-pandemic market?
I think that people, and one of I always believe that there's something good that comes out of everything.
Right.
Good things that came out of this entire last 3 heaven-forsaken years around the world was the use of technology. Our clients used to not be comfortable doing video teleconferences at all, and they have become more comfortable and willing to do this type of interchange. From a proposal perspective, and that's a lot of what we do in the federal space is work proposals and that sort of thing. We really use our online collaborative tools so much more effectively. And so we certainly do that with teaming partners and the joint venture. We do the same thing. When we are working on reporting or anything else that we have to do as a joint venture, just having everything online and all of us so comfortable with going to an online site and working collaboratively in the same document we use Teams because that's what a lot of our client uses. We also use Google Docs for things as well. Mm-hmm. Being able to be conversant in all those things has been, I think, a good outcome, a positive outcome. And again, because my mentor is in another state, even when we've done security reviews or Shonda, when we've done our reviews kind of our organization, we're able to bring people in without, and as a small business, every dollar counts. So the fact that I don't have to fly to Boston to go see my folks, the fact that they don't have to fly here to visit with whatever, I think it helps across the board. So it's my 1 cent's worth.
Awesome.
I find myself more being able to be more easily persuaded to invest in technology.
Mm.
Before it was like, yeah, do we need this? Yeah, but now, after the last 3 years, it just made things so much more comfortable and more efficient, if I could use those 2 terms to describe it. But I'm more willing to open my checkbook to buy something than before would be like, maybe not, But I think it's, if anything, along with the Teams and all the other tools that we use, especially with, folks working remotely, we've, learned to trust the work habits and, and we've gotten better at measuring from a distance also.
Yeah, we're in a mixed situation ourselves here because of, we have a lot of folks that work projects that have worked straight through COVID. I mean, they were in the office on a daily basis because of, security reasons in the projects they were working. We have other folks that are never went back to the office and are still working remote. And I think the important fact is that we have to recognize and support both sides of that, right? I mean, we have to understand that a person working remote along with their family member is going to be in the basement or a small apartment, and how do you support that? What can we do to help that out, even though they're client facing, right? So they're giving support to a client, and we got to respect on the flip side of the coin, that person that goes into the office every day. And we've added a lot of that into our employee survey. We do an employee survey every year with all of our employees, and we've added questions to that effect, and we have adopted their comments. I mean, this year alone, what was the biggest thing on our employee survey that people wanted? One of the biggest things that came out of COVID: rescue dogs, right? Rescue animals.
Oh, wow.
What did we adopt this year? Animal insurance that people can buy through the company for their pet insurance.
Wow.
So that was a big request. A lot of people got dogs during COVID, rescue dogs during COVID. My daughter got one. She lives in LA, and her and her husband got a rescue dog. And one of the biggest things, they wanted pet insurance to be part of our plan. So we got pet insurance for to people to apply for it, or to get, not apply for it, but subscribe to, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So recognizing the employees and the impact everything went through COVID, the good and the bad.
Good. Great.
So I think just to encapsulate what everyone said, it's flexibility, right? That's the way we approach it, because some of our, this applies to our employees as well, but some people like to be reached out and touched from a customer perspective. And so we want to aggressively do that. And then some people they self-manage, and that includes customers. And we've got to be able to be flexible enough to understand which is which, and then aggressively reach out to those that need that. And that also includes new agencies and new customers as well, which is why this background of me is behind me so bleak, because I'm in a hotel room in DC right now.
Oh, wow.
Meeting with a customer. So
Wow.
just that flexibility is what it takes.
Wow. Speaking of that flexibility, I believe Teresa, I had a chance to touch base with her yesterday, and I'd like for you to bring out a point. I think that may be beneficial for small businesses, and you're talking about being flexible and out of this, just recognizing sometimes that some of the practices in your business that could help you save money. You talked about how, not having to necessarily go and meet with customers, not having to go to meet with your mentor. So you're saving money that way, but also recognizing, if you want to bring up about your
headquarters staff that we were talking about. Yeah, so I've got folks here that do like proposal management, and what Sean and I were talking about yesterday was, I was saying, before the pandemic, if I was hiring a proposal manager or a contracts manager or somebody like that, so they're not client facing and they're also, they're not interfacing with other folks, I would have said, you have to come to my Dayton, Ohio office. This is where you work. You come in here on Monday, you work all the way Monday through Friday. We actually changed that during the pandemic, and we are keeping that as a practice. And for example, my proposal manager, who is amazing, she actually lives in Indianapolis. Now that's close enough for those of you who don't know the geography. It's a couple hours drive over for her. So every few weeks she'll come over and hang out for a few days here in the Dayton area. But her day to day is to work from there. And so we're able to not limit our pool of candidates for headquarters work to just here. Now, on a client basis, sometimes and more often than not now, our federal clients are allowing us to have people that support them from a remote perspective. So where before, if you had a base, or a site that was in one city or locality, you pretty much were limited to, 100-mile radius around that place for finding talent. And we are able to, not for everything, of course, but there are items where it makes sense for somebody to be able to live, you know, in another state or in another municipality and not be so close to where they're supporting. And I think that has been, for a small business, a big advantage, because a lot of times the game is, can you get the people with the skill set to fill the job? And then also, as we had alluded to, the fact that it used to cost, you know, everything you do. I mean, you heard Raul, he has to take a crowbar just to open his wallet to do anything, right, Raul? And so every time you do anything as a small business, it's expensive. And so what would happen is I would maybe not meet up with folks up in the DC area. It's only a 1 hour flight, but that's a lot of money. It's a 7 hour by car. All right, but that's 14 hours. I mean, it's 2 days of travel, right? So if I went up there, there's a lot of expense just with meeting with folks. What I've done as a small business, I can do a lot more virtual conversations. You know, we get online and we chat for a while. And then if you know, you have 1 or 2 introductory meetings at some point, possibly you meet in person. But I think it is enabling small businesses to have a larger reach, both with employees for their headquarters and with, or their projects if applicable, but also with what clients and what potential teaming partners you can work with. It doesn't have to be, I mean, I don't know where Bruce is, but I can tell you right now, Bruce and Raul, you know, we're all neighbors here in Dayton. But it's nice to be able to team up with folks from, you know, North Carolina or DC or California, Colorado or whatnot. And post-pandemic, everybody is much more comfortable with that. So.
Great. The next question is kind of for the proteges, just kind of 2 or 3 discoveries, important discoveries, or lessons learned that you received as a protege from your relationship. Are there 2 to 3 discoveries that maybe impacted your processes, some processes that you did, maybe business practice, business principles, maybe, you know, before your joint venture, before your mentor protege relationship, you know, you did something one way, but now as a result of the relationship and some of the feedback, some of the things that you've received from your mentor, you know, it's kind of changed the way that you kind of operate. So if you can name maybe 2 or 3 discoveries that have really impacted and changed how you do your business.
I'll talk and let Teresa catch her breath.
She needs that.
So the first thing that I've learned from both my mentors is there's levels to this, right? So I, as Raul said, I've got a pretty deep history in both the Air Force and with contracting and running other folks' small business and running my own small business. And you think you know, and then you have a mentor as Raul, like Raul, who come in and say, hey, guess what? We just won X, and there's now a DOL component to it, and there's just things that you didn't know that you didn't know, right? And so there's levels to when you win some of these contracts, and you or even going after some of these contracts, that you have to be prepared for learning a whole new depth to the base of knowledge that you thought you had. The second thing that I would say is, it's almost piggybacking on that, is there's just a lot of stuff that you don't know, right? And for instance, when you start hitting certain dollar thresholds, there's certain audits that have to be done, external audits. When you start hitting certain personnel thresholds, all of a sudden the DOL is your friend and they want to come talk to you. You know, when you win a contract of a certain value, all of a sudden the bank isn't your friend. And now you have to figure, okay, so this is great, I won this business, so crap, how am I going to fund this payroll for the 3 months until I get paid? So those are certain things those are hurdles. We overcame them with the help of our mentors. Specifically, Raul was super with this. But there's just stuff you don't know, and there's levels to this, and you have to be ready to iteratively get that knowledge within your organ, and not just within you, but within your organization. And just one more item, and I kind of hit on it before, it's just the folks that get you to one level aren't the folks that get you to that next level within your organization. And you have to be open and honest with them and with yourself, because you might have long-term relationships with some of these folks, and you have to see it for what it is and be prepared. And especially as an owner, be strategically looking for where you're going and realizing what you need to get there. And it may not be those individuals that helped you open the door and carry the boxes, or change the toner in the cartridge.
As Wayne Gretzky used to say, you don't play to where the puck is, you play to where it's going. So you got to look at where we're going. And it may be, the personnel is great today, but it's not a good fit for where we're
Hockey analogy.
so,
Very good. Good job.
I'll try to do my part too, Teresa. And then I think, Raul, I'm gonna have you share, even though I know you're the mentor in this relationship, you've been a protege. So I'd also like you to chime in as well, some of the things maybe that you learned that kind of helped you be a mentor, but after Teresa.
So specifically from a business process perspective, one of the things that Jim was very generous in sharing with me early on was the very disciplined and stepwise process he uses for tying his strategic planning to his budgeting process. And so, because I did strategic planning and always had, but it was always because my job before I started MacLogic was really all around business development, marketing, capture, that sort of thing. So having Jim come to me, and I was always about strategic planning, but it was very pipeline focused. He really came to me and helped me understand that real strategic relationship between, how you're planning forward and how you align and tie your budgets to that. He also provided me with a completely different view and some very specific insights on just kind of the way we approach which deals we go after and pricing around that, and just some of the work that's related to that. I keep saying Jim, but again, Jim and I meet and then he'll send me stuff, but I know that it's a team on the Quantech side, but we very much have had some true impacts in the way MacLogic just executes every day, and how we do things every day.
Great, thank you. Raul.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, from my as a protege on the other joint venture, one of the things that I learned was a steady course. I mean, we, for instance, right? We got our two major things that we won was, Oasis, Pool 1, Pool 3 as an 8A, STB-USB, all these things. But we also won a couple of years prior to that. We won the These Are Anchored 3 IDIQ. Well, we're still waiting for that whole effort to to pay off, and that's just it. I mean, it was a great vehicle, looks like a great vehicle, only 17 other companies, but it's got a minimal use so far, and it's been around for 4 years now. So, you have to stay the course, be patient, continue to meet, continue to align your goals and strategically go after work. We did not win Oasis. I mean, we're already in year, 5 or 6 of our joint venture. So, and a lot of things we passed on because it didn't make sense. So continue to develop the relationship and remember that it is our mentorship, right? So
Great, thank you. And this next one is for everyone. And then looks like we have about 10 minutes, and then we'll probably allow everybody to kind of give some final their final words, final feedback that they want to share. But what are some key characteristics that make your mentor-protege relationship unique and a good fit for you? I mean, you guys have shared some wonderful, great tips and advice, but what are some key things that kind of make your relationship kind of unique and a good fit again for your business and how you do business?
Well, you guys all, because I love to talk, right? The first thing that when you said unique, you know what I thought of is, it goes right back to what Bob said. Culturally aligning from senior members of the organization. We are very much a family, and we look at this very family focused. Okay, so that I think makes us unique. But I think one of the things is that we're in the same type of business. So we do a lot of things around financial systems and support and what I call inside the fence support for our clients. But we do them from very specifically different angles, if you will. There are pieces that we can't really get to that Quantech has a lot of experience in, some hands-on things that we haven't done. And so I think what makes one of the things that makes our relationship unique is that we can cover a broad range of the areas in which each company individually really is at the top of the game and excels at. And then when you combine those together, it creates a really nice full line solution along with the partners that we bring on. But I think first and foremost, from a unique perspective, I don't know that there are as many companies and JVs out there that are, that Bob knows that I go to Disney several times a year, that kind of thing. So
How many companies have a bumblebee in their logo?
See, there you go.
What is that bumblebee?
We got a bumblebee. Teresa?
Yeah, it's all about community. It's all about, there's a story. One of these days I'm going to put it on the Macologic website, so keep out for that. But it's a story that concerns my father, and the bottom line is that we have this saying in my family that it's like bees to honey, and so we share that kind of family look and very focused on respect for the people that have come before us and hopefully providing some guidance for the people that come after us. So
and when you look at our slick sheet and you look at getting back to the capabilities of what Quantech brings to the joint venture, what Macologic brings to the joint venture, knowing them for quite a while, knowing them before they were even Macologic.
Yeah.
So it's that's a uniqueness right there in the culture that we create our business in.
Awesome.
I think, and I know we keep on repeating the same thing, but yeah, the relationship part, every mentor protege relationship is going to be different, right? I mean, we talked about some companies that attach themselves to very large businesses, and I remember early on back in the 1990s, if I'm allowed to go back that far, I went to I visited a company and they had a relationship with one of the larger companies, and the large company helped them get CMMI level 2 or 3, and I'm like, man, that's fantastic. But then that was pretty much all they did, So they never actually work together to go after common goals. And like I said, or like you guys have said all along, sometimes you have to be really careful, with these super large companies, because you get, they could have 3 other proteges, right? And you might be the odd person out if your relationship is not as solid as it should be. So
I'm hoping that you mean that means that we have a solid relationship, Raul. So, I'd be really interested to know of that number that was mentioned earlier. I believe it was 2,000 or so mentor protege agreements, joint mentor protege agreements that their office has gone through. That how many of those have actually won business and or have been successful, right, at winning business / contracts. I think that's what is unique about our relationship that between BISI and Ceratec is we realized that I needed a hammer and he needed a screwdriver, and those were we had the relationship. And as I mentioned earlier, that there were specific tools, we had a specific strategy on something we were going to go after, and we were successful at making that happen, right? Based on what he needed from me and what I needed from him. And the other part I think that's unique, and I'm going to say Teresa and Bob probably have this same relationship, is that there's a lot of knowledge between both of us, right? And certainly we share that knowledge back and forth. It's just not a one-way street. And I also, at least from a protege perspective, I got a big funnel when it comes to how much information can you fit in? Now I'll sieve it, but I'm going to take as much as you can give, and then I'll apply those best practices within my organization, so that I'm making sure that the parts that we're providing him, whether that's pricing, whether it's proposal support, that they mesh in with what Ceratec is doing, so that we're a value add partner.
Awesome. All right, I know we are at the time, and I know Teresa has to drop off. So Teresa, if you want to kick us off, great transition. We'll just go right along, and given your last final parting suggestions, tips, advice that you want to leave off with, and then we'll go around to everybody else.
Yeah, so my advice to any small businesses that are looking to be a protege is, first of all, get in touch with your Apex Accelerator people and have them help you, have them introduce you, have them support you as you go forward, and make sure that you have, alluding back to one of Raul's comments from earlier, make sure you've got your processes and you know what you're going after and what you want to be doing and getting out of the relationship. So I would, that would be my last parting piece of advice to anybody. And then once you do form a mentor protege relationship, make sure that you are, I think we've foot stomped it a million times. Stay in touch, stay in close contact with, but remember, according to, like, again, alluding back to Raul, you still have your own company to worry about, but also you have committed to this joint venture. And so you need to step up and you need to show up. And if that means you're, working a little bit later or on a weekend one time, got to do it because you've made a commitment. So I really appreciate it. I apologize. I had another meeting overscheduled, so I've got to run because I'm running the other meeting. So thank you, everybody. And I'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you, Teresa.
All right, bye, guys.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
Teresa. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Bob, if you want to go ahead, and then.
Yeah, first off, I thought it was a great session. I've been looking at some of the comments that people are putting in on the site, and I think it's a true benefit what you guys are doing. I was a weapons systems program director, and so I dealt with the Boeings and the Lockheed Martins and the Northrop Grummans of my career, buying airplanes and weapon systems. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't know what a NAICS code was when I retired out of the government, because we just didn't know that. And we didn't know, and I didn't know small business goals and values and all that, right? I knew small business goals that we had to put in a contract, but I didn't know dollar size, people size, anything like that. And I applaud what you guys are doing, what the SBA is doing to promote that on the small business side, first off. Number two is take time and understand the endeavor you're about to embark on. For a joint venture, right? So don't jump into a joint venture. Take time and understand it. And like I said, it's like getting married. And if you don't feel right about it, walk away, else because something else will come along. And thirdly, Don't go into a joint venture and go on a bid contest and bid everything you think you're gonna, because now you have some additional capabilities. You need to truly understand what your sweet spot is, what your P-win is going to be on proposals, and then focus on that and focus on your core capabilities and your qualities in your past performance as a contractor, both at a protege and a mentor level, and bring that together and go after that type of work to make it successful. I appreciate your time. Appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bob. Bruce.
So I'm gonna repeat what Bob said. You guys have done an outstanding job. I was really impressed with the All Mentor Protégé Office's presentation. I know that when back in the day when I worked with my first 8A before I started my business, I wish there was a seminar that was put on like this to provide me some of that information. I can remember being in a position in a company where we were actually going to be the mentor, and just the hoops you had to jump through back then in order to make that program work. And this is it's been a much better experience than it was then. And also, she mentioned that she's a 5-person office. That's impressive to see they go through those numbers. And now I understand some of the things that I didn't understand before when I submitted my application. So my parting words would be, I'm just gonna repeat what a couple of guys said. Number 1, it's all about the relationship. Number 2, Raul said, persevere, and then finally number 3, like I said, make sure you can either say the right fit or just make sure it's the tool that you need and you're the tool that they need, so that to go back to what Bob said, this is a long-term thing, and you want to make sure that you can wake up and smell their morning breath every day, because you're going to have to do it, right?
That's the nitty gritty of a true
Guys,
relationship.
I'm on a call. Can you not talk? I'm sorry. Oh,
Oh.
I was unmuted. I'm sorry. My kids just walked through the door.
That's the
I thought I
reality of what
muted
we're
myself.
in, the
I was
virtual
kidding.
world.
I'm so sorry.
It is okay.
Yeah,
That's important too.
Bruce and Raul are used to me. Shonda is too.
Well,
Sorry,
some people would say that's a beer. Now you owe us a beer.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, definitely.
It's a good segue to Raul.
I want to thank you guys for including us to participate. This is my 2nd year in a row, and same thing with Bob and Teresa. And we're if I might speak on their behalf, I mean, we're here to pass on what we've learned, in the Mentor Protégé program. My advice, besides, all the good things that we said about dancing with your partner before you get into a marriage and all the other different things that we said, take the time to really study the program. I mean, the information is out there. The resources are out there, to help you understand. Jill knows if I have a question, I'll pick my phone up in a second. And, and sometimes it's I like to think, that sometimes I bring some, pretty useful information too, So I think we're all, we're all stewards of small businesses, and whether you're, just on behalf of your own company or on, working through the Mentor Protégé joint venture, just keep those lines of communications open with the SBA, just to make sure that everybody is on the, everybody understands the program, and we can continue to improve the program. I'm sure that, like Bruce was saying, the only reason why we're where we're at now is because of all those painful years, to get something approved, right? And now it's, it's a lot easier to get it through than it used to be. So keep up the good work, SBA.
Thank you. Well, on that note, again, thank you to all of our panelists, Teresa, who left, Bob, Bruce, and Raul. What a great way to finish out, giving an overview of the Mentor Protégé Program and then having two companies to share their expertise, their knowledge, and pass that on to you as small businesses. So we want to thank you for your time. We went over a few minutes. Jill's going to close us out, but I always love these sessions because there's so much wonderful rich information and just the realities. I think we as resource partners always like to say that we can give textbook information about, okay, this is how the program works. We're government employees, but then those that have boots on the ground that actually can say, yes, you can apply this, but it works a little bit like this. It works a little bit like that. They've been there, they've done that. They've gotten the t-shirt, they've gotten the whole kit and the caboodle. And so we're just grateful for them sharing again. Thank you so much. And Jill's going to close us out.
And Shonda, thank you so much for moderating. You did, again,
I love doing that. I do.
and when Raul said, you do call, you give so much more wisdom than I can give, all of four of you. I mean, and the fact that you were able to volunteer your time today to pass your wisdom on to the next generation of small business, you're able to give more information and just kind of show businesses how it actually is in a way that we can't as government employees.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And with that, I will close us out. We do have a webinar. Our next series of webinars is, what is that? The 18th, 17th of April. So they are doing business with, and we will have the Air Force in the morning and Department of Energy and EPA in the afternoon. So hopefully you can join us for that. And
April 19th, Wednesday,
April 19th. One day next week, we are going to have that. Now, I'm always like 90% put together. Yes. Yep. So again, thank you so much for your time, everybody. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yep. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Ciao.
All right. Have a great day.